938 here, Big 550 KTRS. So Better Together has done a study about the municipal courts in the region and the communities. Of the 21 communities in Missouri or in the St. Louis metropolitan area that have their fees account for more than 20% of their total budgets, 20 of them live and reside in North County. This on top of the news we were talking about earlier today that Anthony Gray, who is the attorney for Michael Brown, he is the police chief for Pine Lawn.
The prosecutor.
He's the prosecutor and the police chief. He says he's the prosecutor on his website. The Pine Lawn website says he's the public safety officer, which is the police chief for Pine Lawn. Pine Lawn has 3,200 people. They wrote 17,000 tickets last year. Their mayor was just arrested by the feds. He was making $60,000 a year. They arrested him in his house, not in Pine Lawn, because he said his wife is too afraid to live in Pine Lawn. They also have 23,000 outstanding warrants. So my question to you people is, the three here on the board meeting, which you people, Jane Duker, John Deal, and Jay Kanzler, you three people here.
Because we're lawyers. I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, this is what the argument is that they are ticketing these people into a life of poverty, and it's being done in part by Michael Brown's family's lawyer.
Well, I mean, I think that's what's important is when you look at these issues is, because I did see a lot, of social media sort of based on this report and, we're back to Jim Crow and all of that. And I think it is really important for people to have an understanding. First of all, we have the most complicated, crazy municipal, government structure in St. Louis County, and it's confusing to anybody, even people who follow it. And so, I mean, that's hard enough. But when you discuss these issues, it's important to say, well, who are the city officials in these municipalities? And it's important to lay that out because it's a tangled web we weave. And a lot of lawyers, and they're municipal lawyers and they cover a lot of municipalities. And so, but there is a whole sort of network of, municipal governance, and that all needs to be part of the discussion as well. And what you mentioned highlights that. Anthony
Gray is he currently serves as the municipal judge in Wellston and Delwood. He's the municipal prosecutor in Pine Lawn and the general counsel for the Northeast Fire Protection District.
Right.
As well as the police chief for Pine Lawn. So he's a prosecutor and a police chief as well as a judge for another community. I mean, this is outrageous.
That's not very uncommon.
This is outrageous. Mm-hmm. But if this is what happens all over, this is black on black white collar crime is what this is, because all of these communities are 90-something% African American, and they're writing tickets, and then they're out protesting, complaining that these towns are destroying these kids' chance
by making them fugitives.
Right, by making them criminals.
I applaud Better Together for putting this out, and it may be news to a lot of people, but anybody who's a lawyer or anybody who's really lived in these areas, we've known about this forever. And this is the way it works. And these small municipalities could not exist if they didn't have the ability to write excessive numbers of tickets.
But why does Pine Lawn exist in the first
place?
place?
Well, that's the first issue. That's the question we need to have is why does Country Club Hills with 800 people have a police force of, at one point, it's recently gone down, of 13 officers?
Moline Acres, 1/2 square mile, 2,000 population, but they have a $1.5 million budget, and like 700,000 of it is court, money they make off the courts. And
it's also it's not just white municipalities doing this to black drivers. It is white, black. It's all across the board. It's a question of existence. It is the people within those communities that want the ability to control. They run them like little kingdoms. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. And
in Moline Acres, the mayor is African American, mm-hmm. and 3 of the 4 council members are African American, right. And they have 14 police officers to cover a 1/2 square mile of space.
But everybody agrees. We had Rick Stream on. He agrees something has to be done. Steve Stanger says has to be done.
But the courts is the last bastion.
But whites and blacks and liberals and conservatives and protesters and non-protesters all agree this is outrageous. John Deal, please save us. What can be done? What can be done? I mean, how does this? How is this fixed?
To mention, coming to the rescue. Actually, I did have a bill a few sessions ago that actually was killed by a lot of representatives and senators up in the North County area. And what it did is it set minimum standards in order to be a municipality. So you had to have audited financial statements, you had to prepare an annual budget, you had to have use of force policy for your police department, you had to have accredited police officers, and you had to have uniformed police officers actually do law enforcement, not robo-enforcement that you've seen a lot of places. And that was killed. I've actually had a lot of interest from people to try to pick up that legislation again. So I think that's something we're going to look at. But cities should not exist for the sole purpose of fining people that drive through them. I mean, it's just,
and if you had had this
ridiculous.
conversation, let's be real here. Everybody's known all about this, obviously, for a long time.
It's been a joke.
But if you had mentioned, 8 months ago that we were going to start dismantling, municipalities in North County, there would have been an uprising, and people would have said you're a racist because you're trying to take away our governments. And so, the events have exposed something that people would not be willing to talk about before Ferguson. So I do think that in the horrible tragedy, we are now able to discuss things that people were not ready to and fought against previously. So it is an opportunity for everybody who agrees to come together and work on something that can really give some lasting change.
But I think this is a classic example of everyone agrees, but 5 years from now, 3 years from now, nothing's going to be done, and the system's going to stay the way it is.
I think
we don't
we
need
can.
all the
I think we
aldermen in
can
the
do
city of
change here.
St. Louis, and so and everyone agrees that as the population has declined, the number of aldermen should also
They've
decline.
reduced
Well, but not to where it should be. It should be
Yeah, but
a
they're
fraction.
getting there, and I think we have the opportunity to do that here.
Well, but it also took them 100 years to
Yeah,
reduce.
but the point is that when you get down to when push comes to shove, and you say, okay, we're going to take these 4 municipalities and we're going to combine them into one, and the governing body is over here. It's whose ox is being gored, who's losing the ability to control what goes on, and that's where the problem lies.
It will be interesting to see if Jamel Nasheed will be supportive of this bill. Maria Chappelle Nadal will be supportive of this bill, which
It all depends on which ones you pick. Just like the audit that Auditor Schweik is going to do on the municipalities. I mean, the fact that how those were chosen. I mean, there were much big offenders in St. Louis County on the amount of revenue used for getting from courts and whatever fees, and how were those municipalities chosen? We're already seeing which municipalities are going to be protected because they're cronies of certain politicians. So it's going to happen, but I submit that the iron's hot, and we have to exercise leadership in the next session soon, quickly, or we will lose an opportunity to make real change.
As long as we understand it's not a black-white issue, it's not an us-them issue.
Right.
This happens in white, black, yellow, green communities, and it's a fact of life. It has nothing to do with racism or anything like that.
Pine Lawn has 3,200 people, and they wrote 17,000 tickets, so there's not enough black people up there. They're getting everybody.
Right.
And I think also, too, what's significant about the study, because you always hear, well, we're doing public safety, it's the police, and we have to pay for police officers out on the street. It says here that the average cost in these courts is $223,000 a year to operate, yet they bring in $711,000
Right,
a
they're
year
making a
on
profit.
average in revenue. So it's about a $500,000 profit.
It's like a
for the courts.
casino.
And that's beyond what's needed for public safety. It's being used to fund other things that
General
in some of these
services.
cities, who knows what it funds.
Pine Lawn, whose mayor was just arrested, whose police chief, let me say this again, the police chief of Pine Lawn is the family attorney for Michael Brown's family. They wrote 17,000 tickets. They have 23,000 outstanding warrants in Pine Lawn. 23,000 in a town of 3,200 people. And, oh, by the way, there's a Facebook page that says Dismantle the Pine Lawn Police Department. That has almost 10,000 likes. The town has 3,200 people.
I've seen the Pine Lawn tickets. I have clients that are up and down the road there, and it's amazing the tickets they write. They write tickets for offenses that, you just don't write offenses for. But, you can always do it.
Well,
Cross the center line.
I hear you always talking about the technology and, it's, the red light cameras and all that. Red light cameras are the only ones that don't discriminate. They don't see the driver. They're the only ones that don't. Now, that's not to say that...
But Pine Lawn, I think, has 3 of them in a square, and the town is a half a square mile.
Right. But when you talk about the reason why this is so invidious is that it's targeting minorities, low-income people, but, a camera doesn't detect that. So when you're talking about police abuse of minorities, that's a different issue. So if you just want people to do less of traffic enforcement and whatnot,
Yes.
those are policies, right, that need to be enunciated and need to be, uniformly, and that's the other thing, uniformity. I mean, people now are starting to realize that you don't want to cross a street and have completely different rules when you're dealing with a police department or a municipality.
Or from municipality to municipality.
Right.
I mean, it's no secret. If you have a speed limit on Clayton Road and it's 35 miles an hour and you go 37 miles per hour through suburbs here, you're probably not going to get a ticket. But
Right.
you do that up in some of these municipalities and go 2 miles over the speed limit, you're getting $150 ticket.
You're getting a $150 ticket, and then you plead it out to excessive parking tickets for $300.
Correct.
And the people who can afford it pay it. The people who can't end up getting a warrant and end up
get
getting
failure to
arrested.
appear fines.
Right.
Which drives it up, and then you can't get a job because
and
you're a
which
fugitive.
drives up insurance rates. I
Right.
mean, it does have wide-ranging effects.
That's Jane Duker, John Deal, and Jay Kanzler. Back in a moment. Big 550 KT.